I've always been a fan of generic lords, and generic support lords especially. The paymaster just speaks to me in so many ways. I love the theme of him carrying around these treasure chests. I love a good support lord, and he is a good one all around. A little bit squishy in terms of armor, but he's an ogre, so he's got plenty of HP. He's a big, monstrous infantry boy, and of course the cash cascade. I've talked about this before, but definitely one of my favorite support abilities in the game. Just super cool. And then this AoE passive as well. These two make him a pretty potent support character for not too much cost, but this battle's already kicking off here. Tactical Lich commanding the Ogres against my Bretonnia. And yeah, let's take a look at the build here. He's got what I would consider to be a very good build. 3 Yetis here in the back with 4 Pigback Riders, including the Pigback Knights. We'll talk more about them in just a second. Some lead belchers for ranged damage, a few bulls up front with regular Noblars, the Paymaster, and Lore of Beasts Butcher, looking for some Flock of Doom, and Wiston's Wild Form. He's also got the big old Curse of Onrare for a giant debuff. For me, for Bretonnia, just real quick, got 3 Yeoman Archers, some Pegasus Knights, and Alberic for anti-large. Alberic, of course, with his AoE anti-large, going to be a no-brainer in this matchup for a lot of players. We've also got Damsel Lore of Life and some infantry here, mix of spearmen, halberds, and peasant mobs, with Gotrek protecting a Grail Relic at the center. So, back to the Ogres. Yeah, you can see immediately I kind of fly up my Pegasus Knights. I'm going to get my mounted Yeoman Archers kind of maneuvered around the side here. The trick is, of course, that these lead belchers have good enough range that I'm going to have a hard time skirmishing with my Yeoman Archers effectively. And the Pegasus Knights, obviously, are going to have a hard time landing. It really depends on how the Ogres here use their Yetis and the Pigback Riders. But the combination of these 2 units in particular does make them very scary. Wherever I land, the Yetis can come, like, frostbite me and then potentially get rear charged by the Pigback Riders. A few things to note about the Pigback Riders and sort of some additional, experience I've gained with them over the past little bit. One thing a lot of people have pointed out, and it's definitely true, they don't get knocked down, unlike other infantry-size anti-large units. I mean, they're infantry-sized cavalry. It's a little bit of a weird thing, but the interaction that you have to really look for is the fact that, again, they can't be knocked down. So, something, excuse me, like a cavalry charge, right? Like a shock cavalry charge from Bretonnia, whereas a regular spear unit would plow a bunch of the models over and do a bunch of damage. Here, they're not going to get plowed over. And, Pigback Riders, as a result of that, are pretty good. It also seems like maybe multiple lines of infantry are hitting at the same time, combined with that high charge bonus. Yeah, they're definitely very good. I've definitely seen some games where they don't do anything. But in this particular game, they're going to be potentially dangerous for me. You can see I'm kind of just pulling up here to the objective on this conquest, kind of patiently going to do some things. I honestly could just try and waste some of the ammo here of these lead belchers by flying like Alberic around, Pegasus Knights. Biggest thing is the Yeoman Archers. I mean, as much cheap as they are, it would be really nice to be able to put their damage. You can see I'm trying to poke the Yetis here, but just, not really paying attention. Take a few free volleys, and quite a few of those horse archers are down. That being said, Alberic helping to protect this front line. My idea here is he's going to fly over and try and protect this. I do put out like a group attack order, which definitely is going to lead to some overblobbing here. Should have spread these guys out a little bit, but I also figured, like, hey, why don't we just kind of fight in a concentrated blob right now to a degree, see if we can get the buffs sort of stacking up, have Gotrek kind of synergize with everything else. And I mean, the peasant mobs will be gone relatively soon anyway and leave the blob, but in the meantime, you can see that the lead belchers really aren't super accurate shooting the Pegasus Knights, especially out at the max range. So in hindsight, I could just go leave them out at that max range. Maybe just try and waste some of the shots here. But in the meantime, the cash cascade in the front line. Some of the Yetis pull up here, along with the bulls. Going to be a massive brawl on the objective of conquest. And yeah, you can see here I'm winning out. I mean, it's not too surprising. It's just bulls after all, so I would definitely hope I'd win out. But some Flock of Doom going to generate some really nice value, even with the nerfs. I'm going to try and use this AoE damage ability here. I forget the specific name. Wrath of Manon. That's it. Yeah, you can see I did get a little bit of friendly fire damage on it, but the idea for me was just to try and break the front line as quickly as I could, move on to the second line, although this didn't break. Mine actually did. Still just going to bypass them, try and get this back line. That does pull one more Yeti and Bull kind of offline. I'm going to take this opportunity to try and spring the Pegasus Knights, but even when I played this game, you know, I didn't quite fully respect the power of the Pigback Riders here. So I am putting myself into a little bit of a trap in that, yeah, you can see immediately the Yetis come through. They're going to countercharge, start to get that frostbite, blocking my Pegasus Knights on the ground. Some of the Pegasus Knights not even able to land. It's such a like concentrated blob there. A little unfortunate situation, but Curse of Onrare also being dropped. Drops their melee defense, and you already see this unit having taken pretty significant damage. That Pigback Rider already collapsed. More Pigback Riders collapsing from this side. I'm going to pull up close, but we'll keep the health bars up so you guys can see. Well, it doesn't look like that they made that good of contact, but even still, Pegasus Knights are fairly well trapped at this point, so not looking great, but at the same time, I'm also starting to get some terror routes here in the front line. Should be able to get some of this anti-large infantry up, since so much resources went into killing those Pegasus Knights. But yeah, it took some pretty horrible losses on the charge. Still did manage to rout one Yeti, do quite a bit of damage to these lead belchers, at least the one unit there, and took some pretty severe losses. But now I'm going to try and lead some of these Pigback Riders away, see if we can't, again, move up some of the infantry and use them to accrue some value. Alberic charging in once more, but not feeling super confident, although I'm not feeling like this is completely out of it yet for me either. I'm going to move the Damsel up as well, try and use her in melee against the low-tier Noblars, just to get some extra little punch, maybe. Or maybe just shoot out to the side here and try and get some extra healing. But yeah, you can see the lead belchers were definitely very dangerous to my tightly packed anti-large infantry here, and more kind of stacking buffs and debuffs from Tactical Lich. Really nice combination, honestly, to use Lore of Beasts with Cash Cascade plus the Curse of Onrare to just severely stack the stats of these melee engagements in his favor. That being said, I'm going to throw down another Wrath of Manan, try and clear out those Pigback Riders. Definitely should have saved both. Again, hindsight, you know, being 2020, respecting the Pigback Riders more now than I did in this replay even. But definitely should have saved both of those Wrath of Manans for Pigback Riders, and just in general, you're going to want some AoE damage, and they will die horribly to AoE damage, it should be said. Stuff like Burning Head, Wind Blast, Wrath of Manan, you saw there, does effective damage, and they are just, you know, low-tier infantry without the greatest leadership, so a little bit of AoE magic damage, a little bit of terror, and you can get them off the field. There's definitely, you know, you guys have seen replays on this channel, and I'm sure others where they haven't done a lot, but I'm sure you've also seen replays where they've done a lot, so it is a unit you kind of have to prepare for a little bit, but, I mean, to be honest, a lot of those tools you probably still had against the Ogres anyway, right? Like Terror. It does mean that AoE magic damage is more important, like something like Burning Head you might not have included against the Ogres because, you know, Noblars are maybe not the most threatening thing, right? But now you definitely want to have something in case of Pigback Riders, especially if you're playing a faction that's vulnerable to anti-large like Bretonnia, but just any faction, to be honest. But, I mean, at the end of the day, we're making it respectable. The Pegasus Knights managed to come one more go around after some healing, come in, get a little jump on these Yetis with Alberic backing them up. I'm hoping for a quick tear out before the rest collapse, especially the Pigback Riders get there. But, yeah, Gotrek also moving through, trying to butcher the Butcher here. Do manage to get rid of the Yetis, but it's just costing my Pegasus Knights so much. You can see them disorientated there, meaning they're getting charged by, especially those Piggyback Knights in particular, with their 56 charge bonus. Yeah. I've seen some people on Discord and various places, you know, commenting how strong the Pigback Riders are, maybe even OP. Wouldn't necessarily advocate for them being banned or anything. I do think maybe they're slightly overtuned, but they're definitely a very fun unit. I personally love the design, so I fully admit that I'm very biased in that way. Like, I want them to be good because I just love them. And that's, you know, just a personal feeling. But having admitted that, at the same time, from a role perspective, it's nice, again, for me, for a faction to get something that adds kind of a new dynamic to how you can potentially play the faction, as long as it doesn't break their sort of core design philosophy too much. And I definitely think Pigback Riders are sort of skirting the edge of that, but for me, they definitely fall on the side of a fun addition for the Ogres. You know, might see a very slight nerf, or maybe there's a weird thing, like I said, happening with multiple rows of units getting attacks in. But regardless, I've seen mixed performances from them. This is definitely one of the best replays, and granted, credit to Tactical Lich, had a really well-constructed build and executed it, you know, very well. Again, in hindsight, had I respected the Pigback riders as much, maybe I would have actually played this a little bit differently. And even still, you know, a couple of them, it's not like, I guess they pay for themselves. And that's the thing, is they're really so cheap at what, like 375, something like that. You could bump them up to like 400, 450, and it'd probably be fine, given they're pretty consistently, even when they don't do a ton scoring, you know, like 300 to 500. But then sometimes they can do a lot, like these guys here, both 1300 value on them. Again, that's me sort of getting rear charged on my Pegasus Knights. Despite that, though, the Pegasus Knights still, I mean, one of them gets 1400 damage value. The other ones, you know, had I microed them better, probably could have got their own value back. And I actually think this build, again, my execution wasn't very great, but I feel like I probably had the tools I needed to actually win here. Maybe it would have been a little bit tough. Probably should have brought a little bit of AoE damage, like some Awakening of the Wood. Just spam that back and forth with Earthblood, try and proc some Life Bloom, and also just have some AoE damage and control as well, since, you know, Awakening of the Wood will do a little bit of damage, and speed debuff the Pigback Riders, so I can try and just avoid them in melee as long as possible. Also quite vulnerable to skirmish fire, even though they have shields. They're definitely going to take the brunt of that. So, fun one for sure. The Paymaster also getting some nice support value, nice synergy with the Laura Beast Butcher, even though he got absolutely slaughtered by Gotrek there at the end. But very fun stuff. Nice back and forth. Lead Belchers actually ended up getting some pretty good value as well. Yetis themselves, although they are relatively expensive, like I definitely think you want to use them in more sort of niche specific situations, especially against heavy cavalry factions who you might think you're going to try and control their movements and have something that can mass block, deal some good damage in return. Yetis seem pretty solid for that. One pays back pretty much its value. The other two, again, tactically helping sort of the Pigback Riders do their thing. And one of them even comes close to paying for itself regardless. So good overall, very fun battle, very educational for me and hopefully for you as well. Yeah, thanks for Tactical Lich for the games and for everyone else who have been able to play in this early access period. And thanks to Creative Assembly for the early access. And thank you all, most of all, for watching. We'll see you next time.